I'm late, but I'm here now, so it's fine. Went to breakfast today. It's a big wait. It was hard to get in and out of there. Now I'm here. All right. Hello, everybody. Saw there were some people here on with the show. Yeah. Okay. Taking off my shoes. This is like Mr. Rogers. Okay. So what's new? All right. So good news. Caught up after weeks of being a day or two behind. I'm caught up. I'm supposed to be starting page 34 today. And technically, I started page 34 last night. So that's good news. Now I need to maintain being caught up because this page that I'm starting today, or started last night, working on today, and in particular, next week's page are tough. They're tough. And in fact, I probably won't do a lot of drawing immediately today because I need to do some reference selfies for both, definitely today's page or this week's page, but also next week's too. I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. I'm standing in for all the soldier posing. So I have to set up my camera and hold a, actually I'll show you, hold on just one second. Let's see here. This, not real. It's like a, it's not even, I don't know if it's actually an airsoft thing. It just shoots like little plastic, but it's like a pump. I don't know what this is. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, like $15 from China. You can get anything from China. Yeah. Well, this is actually more the classic like M16 A1. It's not exactly right for this period that I'm drawing, which is 1979. The barrel is not quite right. Or is it a suppressor? I forgot the exact term, but it's basically right. The silhouette is right. The size is right. So it's a lot of, I got to do a lot of pictures of me, like, you know, holding the gun and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so that's on my agenda today. And I'll probably just try and work ahead and do the reference selfies for page 35 as well, which I'll need a few of soldiers. And then I'm in the clear, I think, for reference selfies for a while, weeks at least. Which is good. I have to say, of all the things I've drawn in any of the D versus M's, I think I like drawing soldiers the least. Just because it's difficult. There's a lot of little things. There's a lot of little details to get right. And the ones I have in this, so this is a top secret facility. And after doing my research, it seemed like most likely that era, that type of facility, that particular base that I picked out, they would probably be Air Force security forces, which have a uniform that's actually fairly simplistic. Like, it's not a big deal to draw. It's not like all the crazy web gear and backpacks and like canteens and all that. It's a fairly lean. You've seen them probably in different movies. It's like a beret with an insignia. They've got an insignia on one pocket. They've got their a name thing here, U.S. Air Force here, a rank pat insignia, and then like a pistol holster. And I mean, it's not super complicated. But even that is just a pain. you get like 3 or 4 of these guys in the same scene, and you're like doing all these little insignias on their berets, and you're figuring out all their little names. You got to come up with a last name for all of them because they've got a name thing. I'm eager to get kind of clear of the soldiers. So, but I almost am. Yes. Well, I'm from Arizona on top of that, so for sure I'd be on some list. No. This is, again, very... I wish there was an easier way to share images here. Okay. It's weird to me in StreamYard on the share thing. You can do slides. I can upload a whole PowerPoint. I can upload a whole video. I don't see a way to upload just an image. Just share an image. I could show you, like, because I had to go and do my research and come up with a bunch of reference images for what these kinds of military people would look like in that era. So, but no, there doesn't seem to be a good way to do that. I want to try something. What does this do? Let's see. Hold on. No. Weird. I don't know. Maybe it's a thing you could do if all these potential spin-offs. Maybe it's something you could do. It's one of those things you could do if I was a paid subscriber to StreamYard. So anyway, caught up. We're just started page 34. It's I was just clicking buttons. I don't know. So I think I'm going to try to do the low-hanging fruit on my page that I can do before I have to do selfies. And go from there. Let's see here. So we're going to open Adobe Illustrator and open SketchUp, because SketchUp has my virtual set. It will kind of help me figure out like what sort of angle I want for this. And then therefore where characters would be in the scene, therefore what kind of selfies I need to take to kind of fit into that. Which reminds me, I'm working, I generally, got my Adobe open. Let's see here. Okay. I've talked a lot about the fact that I don't like to do edited videos when I'm in drawing mode, because they take too much time. But I think in the next week or two, there'll be a little exception, because I had an idea for a topic. It would be a very, very short video, and it seemed very manageable. So there may be a week where, I don't know, I might even take a week off from live streaming and just show like this prepared video, or I'll do both. Like I'll just air it and talk a little bit about it. But I don't want to, it's not really something to spoil, like you'll see the video when it comes out, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how I tried to make environments that I've come up with in a comic comprehensible, you know, for the reader. So they know, they have a feel for this space, like the little things I think, and again, I don't know what other people do and if they think about it or worry about it, but the little things that I do to try and make this imaginary space make sense to the reader and trackable to the reader, where they, no matter what angle of it I'm showing, no matter what view I'm showing, no matter where a character is, the reader is never lost or confused. They still have some sense of where they are in the geography of the space. And I thought of some quick like visual examples to explain my approach to it. So that will be, like I said, coming in the next week or two, probably. Short video. I'm thinking like less than 5 minutes, because it's going to be very visual and it'll help. Like you'll be able to see it, so you'll understand. It won't be me having to explain this in like a lecture. Let's see. Okay. So I thought, I've been thinking about on days like today, when there are no video guests, what are things I could talk about when I don't really have much to talk about? And I thought today I could talk about, could be story time with Gary. The time I took a polygraph test and how poorly it went. So that might be the story time today. But let me get situated, and then I can focus on telling the story. When it's all done, will it matter what order you read D versus Edmund? When it's all done, a little bit. Here's what I can say. For sure, the last one I think should be read last. Well, I think the way I've always thought of D versus M very much as an anthology series. So I think the last one, the way I'm picturing it in my head, and again, this is years from drawing it, like actually writing it out, fleshing it out entirely and drawing it. But the way I'm conceiving the last one, obviously I would like to do it in a way where you could just pick that one up and get something out of it. But I think that one, more than any other, will really, your enjoyment of it and your appreciation of it and its meaning will be really linked to how many of the previous ones you've read. Because it is very much the final chat. It's tying it all up. It's going to try and take all these different stories and different characters and different ideas and try and wrap up, like, what was this all about? So again, I think it will be, you can read it on its own the way I'm envisioning it. And I think it would be okay, but I think that one you definitely want to have read previous D versus X, and ideally all of them. That's number one. Number two is, so I'm wrapping up now on the first part, the first three. And then I'll be starting on the second part, last three. I know, based on the way I've been writing them. The second three are, well, definitely D versus M4 and D versus M5 are still very much anthology things, and in theory, you could read them anywhere in the whole series, and it doesn't matter. Like, I'm hopping around here, but so D versus M 1 through 6. It will always be that 1 through 5 really could be read in any order. It doesn't really matter. That said, 4, 5, and 6, more than any of the D versus M's I've written so far, do kind of logically lead into one another. And it's hard to explain more without spoilers, but there will be very clear handoffs to each one. End to 4, end to 5, end to 6. Or not end to 6, end to 4, end to 5, beginning of 6. It doesn't mean you can't break that chain, read them in any order you want. But those, like, D versus M 1, 2, and 3, there's no real handoff. Like, you'll see a character in common, you'll see some links, but it doesn't really matter. But, for example, like, the end of D versus M5 directly sets up the beginning of D versus M6. Again, you can read it out of order, and I don't think you'd lose, like, the bulk of the story can stand alone. But as we get into the last stages of it, yes, it's an anthology, but I have to try and start to steer this ship to a landing, and that's not really a ship to a landing. It's a spaceship to a landing. But I have to kind of try and wind this down in a logical way, while also maintaining the ability of each chunk to stand on its own. It's going to be a weird balance for me. So I know that's a long, complicated answer for what seems like a simple question. I guess if I had to sum it up, only the last one. The last one you should read last. And then after that, it kind of, whatever, I'll have a preferred order, which to me would be release order, not chronological, because it's hopping around the timeline. I mean, I've thought it out where you could read it chronologically and it'll be fine. But ideally, release order would be the preferred way to read them. Not required, but read the last one last. Okay? That was a long journey, but it's complicated. But, okay, let's just get this story out. Polygraphs. Okay, so where do I want to start this? In a past life, this would have been 15, 17 years ago, something like that. I was working as a white-collar job in a finance department. I was basically a kind of a low-level accountant. And that was not my dream. That was just, life had kind of taken twists and turns, and I had just, I had let the current carry me into a job that was not a job that I wanted to do or that made me happy, or that I was fine at it, but this was not my area of it. I was never a math guy. So, like, for me to have a finance job was insane. I did my job great. I was good at my job, but this wasn't something that I ever expected or wanted to do. Anyway, I was secretly plotting my escape in a couple different ways. I was freelancing a lot, both graphic design and writing video game reviews for Village Voice Media. But that was to me, like, the idea that I was ever going to make a living off that, I never took that seriously. I was also looking for a different career. And because of my background, my academic background and my family background, I had considered becoming a crime scene specialist, a crime scene investigator. My dad was a homicide detective. I did an internship in college at the medical examiner's office, which is like the county morgue. I was sort of familiar with that whole world, and I just felt like, I think that's a job I could do. And in theory, it sounded pretty good to me. It's a government job. It's, regular paycheck. You get benefits. I felt like it was something that was interesting to me, that I would probably be good at it. I thought, based on my rough understanding of what it was like. So I started going to night school to get certified in all the things that you needed to be certified in to do that job, which I did and am. I'm certified in fingerprint collection and analysis, police photography, crime scene investigation. Like, I have all that training. So then I started about applying to jobs at all the local agencies. It's a very competitive job to get. Not because it's not like there's a huge talent pool. It's that they don't open very often. Government jobs are very easy to keep. I can tell you from personal experience. Like, you really need to screw up to get fired. For whatever reason. Like, it's a fairly stable job. So, and people, for all the reasons someone might want that job, it's interesting. The pay isn't great, but it's pay. You're never going to get laid off. It's not like, oh, COVID's here. Nobody's shooting each other anymore, so we don't need you. Go home. Like, there's always, as long as people are, man is wolf to man. As long as everyone is being a maniac out there, like, you have work. There's benefits. Like, why would you ever leave? So people get those jobs and they retire from those jobs. So they rarely open. So you had to be patient. Like, I got all this training and I was just waiting and like watching at least once a week, I would go and look at all the listings for all the different local agencies and see if they were hiring. And then if they were, you fire off your resume and you just kind of hope that maybe you get called for an interview. No, it's funny actually. So on the in one of my crime scene investigation classes, one of the assignments was to watch one of those CSI shows. I don't remember which one, and list all the things they get wrong. Just like start making and it was one night. It was like, you're gonna sit and watch the show, and everyone write down everything you see that's an error in this. And no shit, like 15 minutes in, like, you're going to like a new page. Like, it just is. It's so bananas fantasy. I can't watch that stuff. I can't. But that's also par for the course. Like, any profession you've ever seen in a movie or a TV show generally is probably completely wrong. I cringe every time I watch anybody playing or talking about video games in a movie or a TV show. I just can't handle it. Now, crime scene tech stuff, now that I've trained in that, a lot of now courtroom stuff, since that's my current job, is knowing how criminal trials work. All that is just garbage. I just can't. It's it's shocking how ridiculous a lot of it is, which makes the shows that are good at it sort of even better. Like, there are a few shows I really like because they get it pretty close, and that's cool, but most of them are ridiculous. Anyway, so I was applying in all these different agencies. When openings would happen, which was hardly ever. Finally, one called me back. I'm not going to name it because I don't want to embarrass and or criticize publicly this specific agency. We'll just say it's a police department in the Phoenix area, and it's a big one. That's all I'm going to say. I don't know, whatever. So anyway, I go to sit for an interview. And I remember before I went, at that time, I was totally working from home. I was freelance. And my hair was long like it is now. And I was I was writing video game reviews and doing graphic design for hire. Like, I was, and working on my unfinished fantasy novel, one of my aborted creative projects that someday I intend to go back to. But I was just, I was just a working artist. So I got called to this like government, crime scene job with this big agency. And so I got my hair chopped and I, got my suit dry cleaned and, showed up like, because I needed a job, man. At that point, I was itching to get out of the freelance thing. Like it was too unpredictable. I always hated freelance. If I lost my current job, I think I would go to work at a bookstore or a restaurant before I would go back to freelance graphic design. I don't think I could do it again. That's how much I disliked it. But anyway, so I got a haircut, got my suit, got all like scrubbed and showed up, did my interview. There's a panel interview with like one guy was like the head crime scene investigator in their division, and then 2 other people. I don't remember who they were. They rotate asking questions. If you've never done a panel interview, it's awkward as hell. Like I actually interview, knock on wood, in case it ever comes up again, super well. I get very anxious before and I worry about it, but again, just lucky. I've never, in my opinion, had a bad interview. And in fact, I've always been like, if I can at least get in for an interview, I have a shot. If they're just looking at there's been lots of times where I've submitted a resume. It's like, I don't know if this is gonna, but it's all about like, just get me there to talk to them. And I think maybe I can make something happen. That was, so even though it's awkward as hell to do the panel interview, I mean, you're sitting there and like, one person asks you a question and you answer, and then the next person asks you a question, and then the next, and then you go back. It's so weird. Anyway, but so I did that whole thing. And I remember at the end, there was one part that was kind of ridiculous. This was a little bit of a sign of things to come. The chief investigator guy, they want to make sure, like, you're applying to be a crime scene technician. You're going to be showing up at murder scenes, just really grisly stuff. And I understand they want to make sure you can handle that. Now, I do quibble with how they chose to test this, which is, we're going to show you some slides of some like awful dead bodies. And you can tell it's so dumb. Like, so like you're in this dark room and then they turn on the slideshow and it's all these like rotten bodies and people who have been shot to death or whatever. And like, and you're sitting there, and for me, it was no big deal because I had like the background I had. Like my dad was a homicide detective. He would bring work home, like murder files home, and they'd be just sitting on the dining room table. And I would be like 15 and say like, so what's this? And he's like, you can look at it if you want, and I'm basically a kid and I'm like seeing what this stuff looks like. And then I did my internship at the medical examiner's office. And that was a whole, now I'm watching autopsies and all that stuff. So like, I have to admit there was a little bit of hubris reaction on my part where it's like, I'm not impressed by this guy throwing up these pictures of dead bodies. And the whole time like they're just looking, you're looking at the slides and they're looking at you because they're trying to see like, like, did his lip shake? Is this breathing changing? It's just very awkward and weird. Like, I feel like there's got to be a better way to test this. And furthermore, in my perspective, it doesn't test anything. Like, anyone can look at a slideshow of some bodies. Like, get into a room with a body. You should have taken me to the medical examiner's office and walked me through the autopsy room. Like, this is stupid. Like, whatever. Anyway, so that kind of annoyed me. And I was fine, and then they asked afterwards, like, so what is your reaction to all that? And it's like, part of me is like, of course, my internal voice is like, what do you want me to say, man? It's fucking horrible. Like, was my reaction to that? Oh, I'm fine with it. It's stupid. Like, this is so dumb. But anyway, so I navigated all that. It was fine. And then at the end, I could tell he was a little, I think I had played it too well, where he's looking at me and he's like, do you think you can think outside the box? This is what he says to me. And I wanted to say, like, 4 days ago, my hair was down to here. And I'm like, what are you talking? Think outside the box. Can you think outside the box? Anyway, this is an example of how it started to go poorly for me, where like I felt like I don't need some government dweeb asking me if I can think outside the box. Like, settle down, man. So anyway, I gave whatever the perfect answer was, and it's like, all right, so I gotta advance to the next round. Yay! Next round is the polygraph examination. So what they do is first they give you this giant questionnaire. I obviously I wasn't willing to think outside the box. This is just the beginning of how this was not a great experience for me. This huge questionnaire that asks you about every horrible thing you've ever done in your life. And when I say horrible, I should say like horrible, because for sure they're asking you horrible things. Have you ever committed a felony that you've never been caught for? You know, and like just like they'll ask you basically like, have you ever raped anybody? Have you ever killed anybody? Have you ever like stuff like that? But it's also a lot of like other horrible things. Like I'm trying to think of an easy example that I'm willing to talk about on a YouTube video. Okay, here's a perfect. Have you ever stolen anything from the office? And your first response is, your first reaction to that is, no. Like what? Like walked out with a printer? No. You know, and they're like, well, for example, if you're printing up lost dog signs on the office computer, you're stealing that paper and ink from the company. So now, with that context, have you ever stolen anything from a workplace? And then you're kind of like, oh, well, I guess, you know? And so like, it's that kind of stuff. Another example is, have you ever exposed yourself in public? And you're like, no, like that's crazy. And they're like, now we would consider mooning exposing yourself in public. And you're like, oh, it's like, so now, given that, have you ever exposed yourself, Mr. Hodges, in public? And then you're like, well, I guess I have mooned people. How many times would you say you've exposed yourself in public? I don't know. Like I was 15. I don't know. I didn't like whatever, you know. But that's that. This is what they're doing. You know. Another one was, have you ever had sex in public? She's like, no. Like now, for example, sex in a car would be technically sex in public. And see, this is like, okay, so you understand? This is the thing. Okay, so you have this massive questionnaire. And then it's asking you very specific details. Have you ever had? How many times? What were the dates? Where were you? Who was it with? And of course, like, you know, who was it with? You're always like, I don't remember. Like, I don't know. Like, give me a break. I'm not going to. On this government application at a police agency. Like, well, it was, you know, and just start listing names with phone numbers. Like, you're just like, I don't know. Some guys. I don't remember. But anyway, but they do want, like, how many times? When? That kind of stuff. And you got to try and ballpark it. Going through this massive, massive questionnaire. Finally, you finish this thing. And you got to sign, like, I believe this is all accurate to the best of my recollection, the best of my ability, blah, 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 blah. Fire it off to them. And they set up an interview with this kindly old lady who now, like, she sits down with you and she goes through it. This is still not the polygraph. This is all the pre-polygraph interview, where you go through this questionnaire and she drills down on any like questions. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to get your complete, honest, accurate answers on all this stuff, which they are then going to quiz you on the polygraph. You know what I mean? So it's like they're trying to see if you're leaving anything out or if you're minimizing anything or whatever. They're trying to come up with like, what are you admitting to? And therefore now where are you deviating? On the polygraph, where do we think you're like being slippery? So you sit down with this nice old lady and she's asking you like all these crazy questions about all that mooning or like shoplifting or like anything illegal you've ever done in your life, you know, or even, I mean, it's not like technically illegal you've done in your life, so they can dial it all in. Then after that, they say, all right, your next appointment is the polygraph. And if we find that you've lied at any step of the way, you're immediately ejected from the process. So I remember after meeting with that lady, I think the polygraph was 3 days later, I'm just sitting at home terrified I'm going to remember something I did that I had long since forgotten about, which was one of the things this was like 17 years ago or something. So I was probably like 30, early 30s. I had a huge disadvantage compared to these people who are applying who were like 19 or 20, who have no life experiences and therefore no opportunities to have broken the law. You know, like I had to try to remember 15 years of sort of being out and doing things, like anything that might have been illegal. Like, did I ever vandalize anything? Did I ever do anything? Like, it's crazy. Like, good luck. Even I very genuinely was telling them, like, I don't remember, man. Like, I might have. I don't know. I don't remember. Anyway. So I just sat there sweating, thinking, like, I'm going to remember some horrible thing that, you know, I was like, oh my God. Remember that time I, like, knifed that homeless guy? I totally forgot. And then, like, now they're going to eject me, you know, because I lied about knifing a homeless guy. Anyway, go to the polygraph. This was the beginning of the end. So sit down with this guy. He's some cop. I'm not going to say this myself, but I will quote my dad, who's a retired homicide detective, who said, only the loser cops end up doing the polygraph thing. I don't know. I wouldn't know that. That's what he said. Anyway, so I sit down with this guy, and he goes right off the bat, like he introduces himself, I introduce myself, and he's like, all right, so today we're going to do your polygraph exam. It would have been nice. I wish I had known like this is going poorly. I might as well just tank it. I might as well just drive it into the ground. So anyway, this guy, this cop, we're getting ready to do the polygraph, and he's like, so tell me, Gary. And he has this very much like, hey buddy, which does not work for me. I'm not impressed. And now I'm so amped up, and this has been such a long process, and I'm so burned out on the process. I just want to like get to it. Like, can we just do this thing? Like, I don't want to be your friend. I don't want to talk about this. Like, can we just, come on, man. So anyway, he's like, hey, buddy. So tell me, what do you know about polygraph examinations? And I, as a matter of fact, knew a lot about polygraphs. First of all, I had the whole crime scene training thing. Second, in case this guy was unaware, I was about to take one. So of course I had been on Google for like weeks beforehand, trying to like know everything there was to know about polygraphs and what I was in for. So he's like, you know, and I was like, but I didn't want to get into all that. And I don't want to talk to like the polygraph guy about polygraphs and his job. It just felt like, I was in like, can we just get to it mode? So I said, not a lot. My first lie of the interrogation. session, the polygraph exam. I wasn't hooked up to the machine yet, but I was like, no, I don't. He's like, no, I mean, you know, what? Just tell me whatever you know, buddy. Just tell me whatever. What have you heard? What do you know? What do you know? Well, I know it measures your biological responses. You know, it's checking your heart rate and your blood pressure and your breathing and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, yeah, what else? And I was like, and I'm just searching now. Made my first slip up. I was like, I know they're not admissible in court. And so, yeah, he scoots his chair closer in a very cop interrogation way. Which, by the way, I'm hip to. My dad's a cop, man. Like, I know what you're doing. Anyway, so that's it. Okay. Let's talk about that. What does that mean to you when you say, or when you hear that polygraphs are not admissible in court? Well, let's drill down on that. And now I'm thinking like, fuck, why did I don't want to talk. I just want to get going. I don't want to talk to this guy about this. And so anyway, I was like, well, my understanding is they're not admissible because it's not a completely scientific technology. It doesn't meet the Delbert standard. People are unfamiliar. Just you can Google that. It's DAUBERT. It's basically like what the scientific acceptance is of any given thing in a court of law. And the fact of the matter is polygraphs, they're not great lie detectors. Okay. You can also, if you want to go down this rabbit hole, Google, there are all sorts of Russian spies and shit who have passed polygraphs administered by the CIA and the FBI. They pass them with flying colors. And there's also lots of examples of people who failed polygraphs who were absolutely innocent. Because it's not a lie detector. It's a biological response detector. And all it's really sensing is that a question is upsetting or not upsetting to you. Basically. That's very reductive, but that's basically what it's detecting. Therefore, it's not useful. You can't, there's no objective scientific way. It's like the same reason like walking a line in a field sobriety test isn't really scientific. Or doing the alphabet backwards for a field sobriety check. What is the correct speed to do that? Fuck if I know, fuck if anybody knows. Doesn't like it's a complete discretion thing. The officer decides if he thinks you seem drunk or not. Same with a polygraph. The examiner is looking at and deciding if he thinks this person's being deceptive or not. And there's no way you could get two polygraph people independently to agree on anything 99 or 100% of the time. That's the basic problem. It's not. No, it's not the Dilbert. It's the Daubert. I don't know how to spell it. Some people, and again, if you want to impress your friends, no one will be impressed by this. They might say, oh, do you mean, Daubert? No. Yes, it's a French last name. The actual plaintiff in that case pronounced it Daubert. You can fact check that. Look it up. Anyway, so, yeah. Here's a side thing, quick. Take it from someone in the whole criminal justice sphere. First of all, disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. Don't take advice from me. But if you're going to take advice from someone who's not a lawyer, do not do the field sobriety test. Insist on chemical testing, breathalyzer or blood draw. Field sobriety thing is horseshit. If that officer has already decided you're drunk, which he probably has because he pulled you over, you're going to screw it up in a way where he's like, yep, Don't like the sound, don't like the look of that, don't like the sound of that. You didn't walk that line straight enough. You didn't touch your tip of your nose right. You didn't do your alphabet backwards fast. Whatever. Refuse. Say, like, I want to do a chemical test. Anyway, okay. So this is what I tell him. Like, well, my understanding is because it's not super scientific and it doesn't meet the Dauber threshold. This is where it went off the rail. This is where Gary realized, this is would be the freeze frame where it's like, you might have wondered how I got here. Like, this is where I realized, like, I screwed up. Because as soon as I said this, which was an honest answer, and by the way, for the record, a correct answer, it occurred to me that this is this guy's fucking job. And he obviously takes it very seriously. So can you imagine, like, it would be like I went to and I would feel the same way. You know, I went and had coffee with a chiropractor. And they were like, what do you know about chiropractic? And I said, like, well, it's basically quackery. Why would you say that to him? This is his job. Like, so I don't know what I should have said. I think I should have pled ignorance across the board. I don't know anything about polygraphs. I've never even heard the term. You know, like, I think I should have just fucking lied all the way, because I don't know. Because if I'm going to be honest, then I have to say, like, I think this is nonsense. And I can give you 8 million examples of how it's nonsense. Documented examples. And right around the same time I was doing this interview, there was a guy who passed a polygraph, some agency, I don't remember which one. I probably wouldn't name it even if I did remember, but I don't remember, who had been busted for having sex with a goat. What was the background check? I know I had to answer questions about bestiality on mine. Like, and he passed, apparently. Like, anyway. So, let's see. I want to see. Yeah, it's a little bit like I was talking to some comic guy, and I was like, well, that sounds like a really fun hobby. You know, like, that's basically what I did to this guy. But it got worse. Anyway, so he's like, okay, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, buddy. Shoot, chair even closer. I'm glad you said that, buddy. I'm glad you told me. Now I can clear that up for you. You got a lot of misconceptions. You don't understand this. You don't understand. I can help you out. I can explain. And I was like, oh, shit, here we go. I stepped in it. It's like, so here's the thing. The reason, that is not why polygraphs are not admissible in court. That's not it. The reason polygraphs aren't admissible in court, strap in, was here in the United States. This is how I explained it to me, like I was in fucking 5th grade. You can tell I'm still angry about this because I hate people who abuse their authority, and even worse, idiots who don't even understand what they're talking about, abusing their authority. Like, it triggers me to this day still. Like, and it was the same back then. He's like, the reason polygraphs aren't admissible in court is here in the United States of America, you have a right against self-incrimination. If you rob a bank and I ask you, did you rob the bank? You can say, I plead the 5th. I refuse to incriminate myself. Polygraphs are the exact same thing because you're not able to avoid self-incriminating if I have you on a polygraph and say, did you rob a bank? Like, I'll be able to know you robbed a bank. And that's why we don't allow them in court. Okay, first of all, for anyone who has any question, that is beginning to end bullshit. That is completely inaccurate. Completely. And it was shocking to have this guy say that. This police officer at an agency. Like, to actually say that. I still to this day wonder, like, does he know that's nonsense? And he's just like poking me, like seeing how I react, which I can't even imagine why. Or is he actually just a moron in that position of authority, which is horrifying? Either way, it's horrifying, but like I can't decide which is worse. I don't know. So anyway, he says this to me. Completely untrue. My answer is actually correct. Fact check it yourself. His answer is completely incorrect. Fact check it yourself. I'm being totally honest about this too, and I'm admitting the ways I failed in this too. I'm trying to be as kind as I can to him as possible, but he doesn't deserve a lot of it. This was a disaster. Anyway, he gives me that answer. Basically, the reason lie detectors aren't admissible, polygraphs aren't admissible in court, is it violates your right against self-incrimination. So this is exactly, I sat and I was like, And this is where I torpedoed myself. I said, but if what you're saying is true, that's first mistake. If what you're telling me is true, can you imagine what a moron I must be to say that to a police officer that I need to navigate around to get a job I want? If what you're telling me is real, if you know what you're talking about, like think of how that must have felt to his ears, the stabbing sound of that to his cop ears. Anyway, if what you're telling me is true, I said, wouldn't breathalyzer results be inadmissible for the same reason? And his face, I felt like I had done this like rhetorical judo move on him, like used his own inertia. Like it was a thing of beauty. But at the same time, I saw from the look on his face, like, I done fucked up. This guy's now not a fan. This guy needs to sign off and say, like, yeah, hire this guy. This guy that I just chopped the legs out from under. So he just, his face, and he goes, apples and oranges, apples and oranges. It's apples and oranges. He said apples and oranges like 7 times. Like, which I knew, like, and I couldn't help but feel a little bit of like, oh, I screwed up. But then also like, come on. Like I knew I was right, and I was right, and he knew I had him, and I knew that was stupid. So he's like apples and oranges, and I forgot what his whole long explanation was. How it was totally different. Breathalyzers are totally different from, like that. Those are admissible because all these reasons, and polygraphs aren't because of all these other reasons. And no, you don't understand. You don't understand. He said that to me like 7 times too. You just don't understand. And so because I was desperate to eject out of this conversation, I finally was like, I probably don't. You probably, And I tried now, this was my pathetic attempt to like pivot to, yes, yeah. It absolutely is. That's sort of that's sort of the lesson of this whole story. I then, after the fact, it's too late. I'm trying to now appeal to his authority to soothe him, like calm, like, you're right. I probably don't know. I mean, obviously this is your job. It's not my job. I all I know is what I've learned from pop culture. I'm basically now lying again in my polygraph exam. Still not hooked up to the machine about like, you're right. I think I understand what you're saying. I definitely remember that because that's important later. It's like, I understand what you're saying. So finally, it's like we get past this whole awkward opening. He walks me through, this is how it's going to be hooked up to you, and these are the questions. They're all the questions I already answered with that on the written questionnaire and then with the old lady. He's going to run through them all again. If he sees any kind of little response, then that to him indicates deception, and he's going to follow up on those areas. So we get into it. It's going fine. I don't have a lot to talk about in terms of like naughty things I've done in my life. It's pretty, like, you know, I smoked weed a few times. I fooled around with girls in cars. I had, like, mooned some guys in college or high school. Like, it was pretty boring. I never even shoplifted. Once I did inadvertently, where a friend stowed something that he stole in my things. I actually had no idea until after we got out of the store. He's like, hey, give me that, like something I was carrying. And I was like, why? And he like fished out this thing he had put in it. That I reported it. I told them when I did the polygraph, but I didn't, like, I don't have a lot to talk about. We go through the whole thing. We get to this section, and the story is almost done. We get to this section. He's like, have you ever lied to someone in a position of authority? And this was not on the written or with the old lady. This was just a totally fresh question. And to me, my gut reaction was like, yes. I mean, to me, it was like, when you, supposedly there's those personality tests where one of the questions, they'll have questions in it that are meant just to see if you're lying, if you're being dishonest on the test. And there are questions like, have you ever lied? Have you ever been angry enough that you wanted to hit somebody? Have you ever, you know, like they ask these questions where everyone should, 100% of people should say yes. And so that's how they can tell, they can look at these marker questions. If someone's saying no, they're like, well, they're being dishonest on this. So we can't take these results seriously. To me, that was one of those guys. Have you ever lied to someone in a position of authority? It's like, who else is worth lying to other than someone in a position of authority? So, I mean, it's like, of course, like if you've lied, you've probably lied to someone in a position of authority. So I was like, yes. And he seemed astonished. He's like, oh, you're going to have to explain that. I was like, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm sure I've lied to teachers, or I know I've lied to Sister Mary Lucilla in grade school, principal. And like, I probably lied to like bosses. He's like, what have you lied? What would you have lied to an employer about? I was like, I don't know. Like if I'm calling in sick, but I'm not really sick, you know, I mean, we've all done that. You call up and like, I can't come in today. I don't feel good, you know, and you're just tired or you just don't want to go in, whatever the thing is. Like, I don't know, that's lying to someone in a position of authority. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, yeah, totally. He's like, oh, but you've never, so that's the example I gave. Like, maybe I've called in sick. I know I've called in sick and I haven't actually been ill. And he was like, oh, but you've never, he seemed like baffled. It's like, you've never called in sick and like gone fishing. And I said, well, I mean, I never went fishing, but I might have sat and slept in, played a video game, watched a movie, you know, like, I mean, I don't know, but like, no, I'm talking about lying. Someone in a position of authority. It's like, I understand what you're saying. And I'm saying, yes. No, I finally, I was getting so frustrated where I didn't understand where he was going with this. I was like, are you asking me if I've ever lied to like a police officer? Like I've never lied. I've never lied in front of a judge. I've never lied to a police officer when I was being questioned. I've never, like, what are you looking for? I don't understand. I want to know if you've ever lied to someone in a position of authority. Like, and finally, just to get out of the fucking conversation, I was like, and this was my mistake. This is my responsibility. I have a lot of responsibility in this thing being a disaster, but I was like, I guess not. I mean, I gave you some examples and you seem to be meaning it in a different way. I'm not clear on how you mean it, so I guess no. So then we go to the polygraph and he asked me on the thing, have you ever lied to someone in a position of authority? And I had two thoughts when I was answering the questions. First of all, I still think yes. I still don't understand your question. And second, I lied to you when I said, I probably don't understand polygraphs, and you're probably right. Like, that was a lie. I just want to get out of the conversation. But I was like, no, I guess not. You know? We do the whole test. He goes out of the room. He comes back. He's like, Mr. Hodges, looks to me like you were being deceptive. And I'm like flabbergasted. I was like, what do you mean? Where? He's like, on this question of, have you ever lied to someone in a position of authority? You looked like you were being deceptive. And I was like, that was the thing we talked about. Like, I don't know. I have to admit, I think I just gave you the answer that I thought you were looking for. Like, I told him this. Like, I don't know. What do you want me to say? I said yes. You were like, no, I mean, and I was like, well, then I guess no. I don't know, but now I'm all mixed up about it. I don't know. He's like, well, I'm just going to have to say that you were deceptive on this question. I was like, I don't feel that was the case, but you're going to say whatever you're going to say. And that's exactly what I said to him, because I was so fed up at this point. Walked out of there. I was done for the day. It's just like 4 hours of my life. And so the only good thing about that whole ordeal, I did not get offered the job. I wrote an angry letter to the head of that department and everyone all the way down saying, like, this was my experience. Just so you know, like, this is what I went through. And and they actually sent me a little bit of an apology letter a couple of weeks later. So I could tell, like, this guy was maybe not their A-game polygraph person. But the only good thing about this whole story, other than the fact that I had a polygraph experience, was dealing with the guy, like, showing me the dead body slides to see if he could get a reaction. Dealing with him asking, like, think outside the box. Dealing with this dimwit in his little polygraph box. Those experiences were enough to make me realize I don't want to be a part of your boy band. Like, this is the lamest clubhouse I've ever seen the inside of. Like, it spoiled the whole thing for me, which in a way was great, which was good, because I know in retrospect now, I would not have liked that job. I would have gotten bored out of my mind really fast. I think I have way too much, and this is another admission of a failing, sort of. I have way too much intellectual vanity to be taking orders from a police officer who I might think doesn't know what he's doing. You know, if they're like, dust here, take a picture of this, do this. I might be like, shouldn't we also shouldn't we also dust? Aren't you curious about, shouldn't we pick this up? You know, like the fact that it's not like the shows, like you don't have a lot of authority and discretion as an investigator. You're mostly working at the direction of a detective. And that's like any other job. There are good detectives and there are bad detectives. And I just realized, like, I think I would lose my mind and I would be quickly branded as someone with an attitude problem. Because there would be some people where it's like I just wouldn't respect them and I wouldn't trust them to do their job. It's not a great quality depending on the job you're in. Like and that's why it's good I'm in a job now where I have a lot of autonomy and I'm sort of the last, like I'm kind of the authority of what I'm doing. I'm the one who answers questions about it. I'm the one who makes decisions about it. I think it would be very hard for me to be in a situation where I worked for someone that I didn't respect. And I think that glimpse of that whole life, that career, made me realize like that's exactly what it would be a lot of the time. Like if these are the people deciding who gets these are the guys, the rope line, letting people into the club, like who's inside? Like it's gotta be a shit show. So it was good. It was frustrating and enraging, but ultimately good because it made me realize this is not where I want to go. I definitely need to get out of where I'm going, where I am right now, but that's not the right place for me. So anyway, that's my experience being polygraphed. He didn't. He did. Top 5 lies. I've got a good one. This might be the top one because it's so stupid. In 6th grade, no, it wasn't. I wasn't that old. It's fourth grade. Fourth grade. There was this girl I liked who sat in front of me. And I don't know why I thought this would be a good idea. I was a stupid little boy. I put 2 giant Band-Aids, one here and one here on my hand. And just like, you know, set on my desk, like very visible so everyone could see. And I waited for someone to come by and like, what happened? Another stupid little kid, you know. And I'd say like, crazy dog bit me. It's this crazy dog. Like I was walking home and this dog just ran out of the alley, just latched on. And like everyone was like, whoa, what? And like the girl that I liked overheard this and turned around. She's like, what? That happened to you? And I was like, yep, it's pretty gnarly, pretty bad. And she said, can I see it? Can I see it? And I was like, no. It's too gross. It's too gross. You wouldn't be able to handle it. That's got to be in my top 5 lies. I don't know what was my 4th grader logic. And then we kissed. I don't know. You don't. You don't. But the point of the story is a polygraph wouldn't tell you. Polygraphs are pseudoscience, people. Just like chiropractic. Chiropractry? I think that's how you say it. It's made up. It's woo. It's like acupuncture. No, it didn't work out with her. She didn't fall head over heels in love with me because a dog bit me. I don't know. Clearly, romance is dead. I don't know. All right. Well, I guess I need to do some reference selfies. I'm trying to think if there's any other last thoughts. Watch the top 5 hip hop albums. I've started working through some of the suggestions they had for me. Because remember, so if you didn't watch, I sat this one out. I don't know anything. I don't know hardly anything about hip hop. But I was really, it was, and I mean this completely unironically, completely earnestly, it was a joy to listen to 3 guys that I like talk about something they love so much. Like that's just really fun to listen to. And it gave me a lot of envy. Like it was like, I want to know about that. I want to have that experience. Like I want to, you know, I want to participate in this thing. This sounds great. So at the end of the thing, they gave some suggestions. I scribbled them down. And I've been trying to like slowly dip my toe in. I think I started with Tribe Called Quest. And then I dabbled a little bit in Wu-Tang. And I have to say, I'm not ready to give any responses yet because I have to admit it's early. And this is the one area maybe Squatch could accuse me of being a fancy white. It is so that the music is so different from any kind of music I've listened to in my life that I find it a little hard to, I don't know if this makes sense. It's like I'm still like adjusting my ear to it. You know what what it reminded me of? I don't speak Spanish, but I took, a few years of it. So it's like I wouldn't even say I can get by, but I can sometimes roughly put together like what's being said, or it's much easier if I see a sign in Spanish, I can usually like kind of get the gist of it. to me, it's like listening to conversational Spanish in the sense that I can't just listen and get the thing. I have to like, it's like this intense kind of listening to try and like, I have to scrub it in my brain to try and even come to terms with it. I don't know how else to explain it. I'm just finding it's just very different. It's very different from anything I listen to. It's very, it's not something I'm finding it easy to casually listen to. Like I have to be a little more engaged, where I find that a lot of music I listen to, it's sort of, it's not background, but I can kind of listen while I'm working and it doesn't distract me. I don't, if that, yeah, I think it's just it's kind of it's a big swing where it's like, whoa, this is totally different. It's almost like listening to spoken word or something, where I feel like I have to concentrate more on that's the big difference. I think I mentioned in past top fives, I'm not super, I appreciate good lyrics. I appreciate great writing, songwriting. But very often, like, the lyrics, I couldn't even tell you what they are. Like, it's just the sound of it. Like, it's the melody that I like. It's the mood of it that I like. And at least in this early dabbling in hip hop, my impression, again, very early, is you can't approach it that way because it is such a verbal, it's such a spoken art that you need to be listening to the words. Because, and this again, like musically, at least the stuff that I've been listening to so far isn't like overly complicated, and it's not just the music, like it's mostly just like beat, you know, like to me, to my ear. Like I'm not hearing, like it's mostly like it's mostly you're listening, it's like a spoken word thing. Like you're listening to this person talk. And like that's a whole different, that's not how I'm used to listening to music. So like I listen to a lot of soundtracks, which would almost be the polar opposite of that, where it's like there's no words at all. So I don't know. It's definitely an education for me. But anyway, yeah, Jim, what's your top line? Are you willing to share your top line? That he actually makes his cartoons. It's not him. It's not him. It's AI. It's all Midjourney. That is dark. That is some dark shit, Frank. Screen capping this for when Dateline comes to talk to me about you. You knew Frank, right? Well, I mean, kind of. You guys were friends, or I wouldn't say friends. I don't. Anyway. Oh, okay. Hip hop. The next one, you should watch that. It was great. It was a lot of fun. The end. The next one, sometime next week, we haven't picked a day yet, is top 5 movie villains. I already have my list done. I'm excited. Some surprises on that, and I think there's some villains people would expect me to have on there that are not on there. So there'll be some kind of inverse surprises. There'll be surprises like that. I was sure Gary was going to name this one or pick this one. Nope, not at all. It was weird trying to come up with my idea of what makes a great movie villain. And there were a lot of obvious choices that I felt didn't. They were great and I love them, but they don't hit that criteria in my head. And that's why it's going to be important, as usual, to emphasize, we will in the outset of movie villains, these are our personal top 5, not all-time greatest, not inarguably like these are the 5 and everyone else is wrong if they picked otherwise. These are our personal top 5. The top 5 villains that I most like to boo and hiss when I'm watching this movie. That I just think like, oh, that person's terrible. Like that's what I'm looking for. And there are some villains. Like here's one that never would have been in the running, but like Belloc in Raiders of the Lost Ark. To me, he's not even in the running because is he a great nemesis, like a great foil for Indiana Jones? Yes, absolutely. But I kind of love him, and I never really hate him. Like he's just the foil. Like he's not. To me, he's not a great villain. I like him a lot, and I love watching him in that movie. But he's not like a boo hiss villain. He's not like, oh, that guy needs to get what's coming to him. Like, I think that's part of it too. Like, it's someone you gotta like, this guy, someone needs to do something about this guy. You know, like that's to me a great movie villain. You're like that guy, and also a little scary. Like Belloc's not scary. Like I'm not intimidated by Belloc. So anyway, yes, my number one is Officer whatever his name was. I don't remember. At the unnamed police department, manning the polygraph exams. All five of the cops. No, but one of them is. That's all I'm gonna say. To see which one see who, you'll have to tune in to top 5 movie villains. One is a police officer. Public Enemy is next on my list. Once I get through my dabbling in Wu-Tang, which I'm going through like 36 chambers. Once I get through that, Public Enemy, because you can't escape. Everyone talks about Public Enemy, and I can tell just from the talk about it, they're one of the most respected, one of the most, one of the ones to listen to. So I'll be checking them out for sure. So. Not what I said at all. I said I took 2 years of Spanish, and I can roughly know what's written down. You spoke, and it's talking very fast. I don't know. If you talk very slow, maybe I could put it together. No, he wasn't. But Scott, if you ever think of a top 5 topic, you got to pitch it. We do bring in guests. Oh wait, Scott, not Scott Lost, Scott Circland was. I mixed up my Scotts. I saw Scott in the chat, so I assumed you meant Scott Lost. Oh. I like that idea. Jim, what do you think of this? I have to pick the next one after movie villains. And I haven't yet. I have an idea, but I haven't picked it yet. Yeah, see, mine is going to be more like which 5 give me the most visceral reaction. I enjoy watching them as well, but like the most kind of like, ugh, like this son of a bitch reaction, because there are lots of villains, like I was saying before, where I love watching them, but they're not particularly scary. I think the things they're doing aren't particularly terrible. Like it's not, it's great. Almost any Indiana Jones villain to me is in that category, where it's like they're just, they're like a B movie villain, like a mustache twirling villain. They're just kind of like, okay, and it's great. It works in the story, but it's not, I'm trying to think of one. I'll mention an honorable mention just to give you a sense. of like what I like in a film. Let me look at my list real quick to see if I can give a good example that illustrates what I mean, what I'm looking for in a movie. Okay, here's one. Mild spoiler of an honorable mention. Actually, no. I'm not gonna do. I'm gonna do one of my cut ones that didn't even make the list. Clarence, Botiker, and Robocop. Okay, fun to watch. So he, I enjoy watching, but also awful. Just an awful, terrible guy you want to see get killed. Like you don't want this guy to get away at the end. And that maybe that's part like one of the markers. Like if Belloc got away at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, I don't know, whatever. It's still a great movie. I don't care. It's cool. Like it's cool that he got blown up by the Ark, but like that's kind of immaterial. But let me see if there's another one I can do. I mean, Clarence Botiker, though, he's like you hate this guy. He's entertaining. He's kind of funny. He's kind of cool, but he's also like he's horrible, and like you want a comeuppance. Another one. This is one I shared with Jim as one that I wish like I liked enough to be top 5 or even honorable mention, but Reverend Henry Kane from Poltergeist 2. Remember Poltergeist 2? You remember the creepy old Reverend that like comes by the house? He's like looking in the screen door, trying to find Carol Ann. He's just awful and scary and ugly and like and he's got this like old preacher kind of, like the way he talks and enunciates, and he's just terrible. Like he's fun to watch. And that guy murdered that performance. He's so good. But he sucks. Like you want bad things. Like this guy, someone take care of this guy. Like someone needs to deal with this guy. That to me is like what makes like when I was doing my list, that's what it's like. They had to be in that kind of category. Like this guy sucks. This girl sucks. Like terrible. Bad person. That's it's so that's why some are kind of disqualified in that way, where it's like I don't get that reaction from them. I could go on all day, but we're saving it. Top 5 movie villains sometime next week, Wednesday or Thursday. Frank, you gotta check out Scott Lost. He's got a great comic series. Got a couple great comic series, and he was on last week. Was it last week? God, it feels like a lifetime ago. My time is a little screwed up. I got my Omicron booster shot on Wednesday. I don't know about you guys, but every COVID shot I've gotten laid me out. Wiped me out. I am so jealous that people are like, my arm kind of hurt, and they're fine. Like I get full-blown flu-like symptoms for a good 24 hours. Fever, chills, pounding headache, full body aches, no appetite, like the whole thing for like a day. And that was me this week. I got the shot like 11:15 on Wednesday. And I was pretty much a mess until about 2 o'clock Thursday. Like just terrible, like sucked. I'm glad I got it. I get the shots every time. And so now that's why it's like, even that seems, like Monday seems like 2 weeks ago. It just that screwed up my time. Let's see here. Yes. Yeah. What? You're just similar like him. Like in a black suit with a hat, like an Amish hat? Yeah, last week. See, it messed up. It's a good thing this last page I just finished was an easy one. Because even though I was behind, I was still able to catch up even though I did no work for like 24 hours. I was just useless. Scott Lost, please post your info in the chat and I'll share it to the screen. So, yes, the newest boosters, you have to ask, you got to make sure you're getting the right one, but my understanding is it's the only one that's going to be available. It's a retooled vaccine that addresses the Omicron variants that are floating around, which the previous versions didn't. It offered you those offered you some protection, but this latest version is tooled more for them, which is great. I still, knock on wood, have somehow navigated this whole thing without getting COVID. Or if I did, it was asymptomatic and I didn't know, but I don't think I ever got it. So it's nice. Like, I figure it someday, like I'll roll snake eyes and get COVID. I would like to have some protection. What I'd like to know, and there doesn't seem to be a clear answer on this. Like, I've got a friend who gets the shots, never had any reaction at all, really. Sore arm, and that's it. I get them, and I'm legit ill, starting from about hour 12 to hour 24 past the shot. I'm good for about 12 hours, then I start to feel weird, and then I'm full-blown sick for 12 hours. What I would like to know is, does that indicate anything about how we would react to the actual virus? Does that mean, what does that mean? Like, I understand that if you're sick from the shot, it's not the shot making you sick, it's your immune system. Like, all your symptoms are being generated by your immune system, going into action thinking you're sick. Does that mean my immune system is super reactive? Like, if I got COVID, it would wipe it out? Or does it mean I would be miserable because what does it mean? And what does it mean for, like, my friend who has no reaction? Would she not ever know she was sick? Would it run wild because her immune system isn't having much of a reaction? Like, is it totally unrelated? I don't know the science. I don't. Oh, no. Yeah. No, that's a good look to retire. Right. Let me see if I can find, I don't know if Scott Lost is still here, so let me see if I can find his info post. I think it's accidental ignorance. You can find all this stuff. There we go. You can find Scott Lost's work here. What else? Okay, so top 5 movie villains coming up. Reference selfies today. It's crazy. I mean, it's still weeks and weeks of drawing, but I've got my thumbnails that I work from. like, it's not my thumbnails. These aren't thumbnails. It's my page plan. You can see the spreads. These are 2-page spreads to help me kind of, and so each week what I'm doing is, you see I have dates. So I know like this Saturday, what page should I be working on? It's crazy now. So this is why we've been rebranded the home stretch. So I have, this is my, it's 1, 2, and then just barely into the 3rd page of thumbs. These are all done. And right now I am starting this one. This is why I'm more than halfway. Like, and once I finish this page, like it's kind of crazy to see like, I'm getting there. It's still months away, but it's months because it's a page a week. Like that's slow. Like when you really think about it, it's like, it's getting, and story-wise, like I'm at a point where, no spoilers, but I was looking, it's like 3 weeks from now, I'm going to be drawing a thing that I couldn't even imagine drawing when I started. Like it seemed so far away. And now I'm like finally drawing it. It's crazy. So it's starting to get there. It's starting to get there. I'm dying to see it done, not just to get off the hamster wheel of just drawing. And not just because I want everyone to see it. This is something I've talked about in past live casts, which might seem weird, but like, I kind of want to see it. Like so much of this process, I think any of my fellow creators can appreciate this. There's an element of like, I have this vision. Now I'm going to make it. I'm going to do this thing. How's it going to turn out? Like you don't know until you do it. You have no idea what it's really going to look like, what it's really going to feel like. Like you can have a pretty clear picture. Maybe you only have a fuzzy picture, you know, but whatever your ability to imagine it is, it's imperfect. There's no way to know exactly what this thing is going to be like when you deliver it. And I've talked about this in the past. I think I was very intent this time with this 3rd comic to try and maintain the joy of doing it. Try to maintain the enjoyment, you know, just really liking the craft, which is something I felt like I lost a little bit in 97. I like how 97 turned out. I'm very happy with 97. I'm very proud of 97. But it was a slog. Like I just felt like it was really it was just painful for some reason. And I think it's because my head was in the wrong place. And that was something when I started this one, I set out, it's like I want a different mindset. I want to enjoy this. I want to be working. I want to be getting my page rate out, and I want to finish. But I don't want it to be work. Like I want this to be something I'm enjoying doing. And I think I've managed much more successfully. It's always a struggle, but I've much more successfully managed to do that this time, where I'm just kind of enjoying it. But part of the enjoyment is, rather than being frustrated with the picture in your head not matching what your modest ability to draw is, pivoting to kind of an enthusiasm for, let's see how it turns out. It's going to be different. It's not going to be exactly what I pictured. It'll be fun to see what it ends up being. That's I think the mentality that I've had to try and maintain to enjoy the process more. One of the things I've had to do to enjoy the process more. if that makes sense. I'd be curious if anyone else has had similar experiences in that. I think you need to be open to, it's not about being open to it being shitty. It's not about being open to like, it didn't turn out very good. It's still cool. That's not it. It's being open to like the idea that there are many different possible incarnations of this thing, and a few of them are valid. And let's come up with some valid expression, even if it's not exactly what I pictured. I think that's the key, if that makes sense. Let's see. He has read both, which is crazy. And I mean, he's my dad, but I think I could read my dad. He seemed to really like both. And what I really, he's always the first person to read, because at the time I was living in an apartment and I couldn't have the comics shipped to the apartment because it's a sketchy area. I was afraid someone would walk off the box, and I had a weird address where a lot of times I just didn't get mail. So I didn't want to be putting like, a $200 or $300 comic order and then it just goes to the wrong place and I never see it. So I would have them delivered to his house. And it was a convenient way to just go over there and pick it up, open it up, and just give it. It's like, well, here's your copy. Your son made a comic. Here you go. And he would sit and read them. Not right, he would flip through them in front of me, but then always like a day or two later, he would email me. And you could tell the guy read it, with the responses. He really sat and read it, because he would have sort of thoughtful reactions to each comic. And so with each one, every time, and it will be the same with this one, you do this thing and you put in the print order and you wonder, are people going to respond to this? Is this too weird? Is it too whatever? Is it just not going to work? Are people going to get it? Are people going to enjoy it? You don't know. You've been too in it for too long. And at the end of the day, you're writing the story that seems right to you. And that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be right for anybody else, or that you'll find those people. So you just sort of cross your fingers. And 97, I had some hesitations about, because my first thought was there might be people who are into D versus M 1970, or into D versus M because they read D versus M 1975. And that's what they want. They want more of that. And as soon as I do something that's not Men in Black responding to a scene, I'm going to lose people. I thought that was a very distinct possibility, that they would read 75, they'd be like, that's cool, and I'd give them 97 and be like, I like 75 better. I don't know. And 75, or 97, there's a lot of weird, all of them have weird choices, this one included, but 97, about half of it takes place in a room with just two women talking. And it's really heavy on it's Jenny's story. You need to care about this person. You need to be interested in having her talk, for the whole book. You need to be, if you're not into her or bored by her or whatever, it's just show me the aliens, whatever. 97's not really going to work. So I had, I thought there were a lot of ways I could lose people with 97. But whatever, that was the story I wanted to tell, which is what I always do, which is what I'm doing with this one. Sent it off to print, left it with him, and when I went home, I thought, even my dad, I might get a polite response. I might be or something kind of a pseudo, very good drawing or something, which is okay, well, that's not a rave review. It's just, he's finding something to say, but he didn't love it. But I was surprised he was way into it. And he also really was into the Jenny character. And I thought, that's when I first started to think like 97 might work out. Because if my like 70, at that time, 71-year-old dad, retired cop, is into Jenny and into her story and sympathetic for her, like rooting for her, I think this will work out. I think, like I think people will be okay with 97. So we'll see. This is, I've said this in a past stream. I think 79 is probably I don't want to say the most challenging. I don't think it's going to be difficult for people to read, but it's I think the most. How would I say this? Whatever my concerns were for 97, they're kind of more so for 79. It more goes like out of what you might expect this thing to be. After this, Diva Zem 4, Diva Zem 5, Diva Zem 6, I think are going to be, in terms of accessibility and broad appeal, way more broad and accessible than a lot of the first three. I think the first three, each in their own way, were a little challenging maybe for a reader in different ways. And I don't mean challenging, again, I don't mean challenging in terms of difficult. I don't mean it's like, oh, it's too smart. Like, that's not what I'm saying. It's just not, to me, it's just not a kind of comic I see much of. I guess that's the simplest way to express it. 79, I think, is the most of that. It's the least of any other, farthest removed from any other comic I've ever read. Okay? If people dig 79, I'm home free. Like, it's like Diva Zem is going to work. Like, I can almost say that globally about the whole series. If people are a little like, I didn't know what to make of 79, or like, whatever, it's fine, because that's the most challenging one. And the rest are easy, I think, for readers to deal with. Talking, anyway. Yes. Right. I was braced for that. I'll be braced for that for this one. I don't know. I never know each time. Again, like, I would never be. I would never pretend to be smart enough to know what an audience will like or not like. Like, I don't know. And I would, even if I thought I knew, I would never be dumb enough to believe it. Like, that I knew. Like, to me, that's like, every time I hear another indie creator say, like, well, you can tell they're trying to calibrate, like, target an audience or calibrate, this is what, like, it's like, Godspeed, man. I have no sense of that. And I wouldn't even want to attempt. I just make comics I think are interesting. That's it. That's all I can do for me. And then it's all just a game of, I can't be that unique. There's got to be if I think it's interesting, if I think it's cool, if I think it's a good idea, if I think it's dramatic, if I think it's emotional, if I think it's personal, certainly someone else on the planet will. I'm not that special. I'm not that unique. I'm not that much of an individual. The trick is to find those people. There are 7 billion people on the planet? Certainly 1 million of them, which is nothing, would be really into D versus M. 1 million, that's fantastic. 1 million potential readers? The trick is, how do you find them? That's the rub. That's the challenge. But I don't think about, like, what's my audience? What does the market want? That's crazy talk. I just make a thing that feels right to me. This feels right. This feels like this is the story. I think this is good. And I just make it. And then, you know, you gotta hope somehow it finds a way. Wow. Frank is turning up the dark today. Are you okay, Frank? Okay. That's enough today. 1 hour 45. I need to change into some clothes that would be more useful to me reference-wise, something with a collar or something where I can sort of get closer to a uniform. Not exactly. I mean, you'll see. That's another thing I plan to share later. I plan to do, once I transition out of live stream, I think I brought this up before, but I want to just keep saying it because I want to partly make myself accountable. Once I've wrapped up all the live streaming and I pivot back to edited videos, I want to do a huge video. I would like to do like an hour talking about reference, just as a topic, just in general. Live models, SketchUp models, having props, like all that. Like when I have little dinosaur toys, all of it. How I use reference in different ways. How sometimes I'm using it very closely, like there might be a character in a comic where I'm barely changing them at all. Like I had someone stand in for it and I'm basically just drawing them. Maybe I'm changing their clothes to something that fits or whatever, but I'm basically just drawing them. Like the Raving Man in D vs. M 1975. That looks exactly like my friend Luke, who sat in for it. That's it, just straight, straight across. Or like where you deviate a lot. Like Old Man in Black was me. Some of the aliens are my friend Kevin. I'm the soldiers, and they look totally different. Like you're not gonna look at them and say like, oh, I can tell you did. Like no, I changed them completely. So like you wouldn't know. But how I use reference, I think the soldiers will be a good example to show. I want to show that like that spectrum where there are some characters that look essentially just like the reference. I'm just kind of straight drawing the photo versus some where I'm using it as like a touchstone, but I'm deviating a lot because I don't want them to look anything like whoever the model is, like the aliens, like the soldiers. I have several, like a bunch of different soldiers in this book, and they're all me. They need to look distinct, different heights, different builds, different like face shapes, everything. But I'm the one posing for it. I want to talk about all that. I think it's something I've talked about in past videos. I think especially young and inexperienced artists treat reference like it's a weird boogeyman or a weird taboo. And it's silly. It's silly, silly, silly. And I think it just needs to be sort of more openly. I think it's another symptom of the problem of artists kind of weirdly, they're being a little jealous and secretive about their process, wanting to be perceived a certain way, not wanting to let people in on how they're doing what they're doing. I think that's generally kind of toxic. It creates a lot of these like dumb ideas about like what's cheating or not, like it's just weird. So like, and what an artist is supposed to know, like an artist is just supposed to be able to know what a horse looks like when it's galloping and just draw it off the top of his head, just from years and years of experience. It's ridiculous. Like you look at a photo. Stop it. Anyway, I want to get into that. The soldier stuff will be definitely featured. Let's see. You pick any journalist in any medium to interview you about your book. Who would it be and why? Oh boy. Lex Friedman. He's not a journalist. I've been really enjoying his podcast. Charlie Rose, before he was exposed as a sex pest or whatever happened, I really liked his interviews. Yeah, probably. Right now. I'm on a Lex Friedman thing right now, where I'm really enjoying his shows. I'm listening to one with him and Duncan Trussell right now, which is really good. Yeah, it's true. Speaking of which, I need to do a little sculpting for a reference. I want to sculpt an alien head to kind of get a better sense of different angles. I've got clay, I've got all my tools, but I need like one of those wireframe, like an armature to kind of hold it up. So I'm going to have to go to a art shop to get that stuff. So one of these live streams, probably, it's going to be soon. Probably not next weekend, but the weekend after that. It might be me live streaming from my kitchen table while I'm sculpting. Because I got to do it sometime, and I might as well talk while I'm making an alien noggin. I think that was the thing. I thought he got Me Too'd or something. I don't remember the details. It was a while ago. Okay. That's it. Closing in on 2 hours. Good to see everybody today. Hope you enjoyed Gary's disastrous polygraph story. Decline the field sobriety test. Insist on a chemical test. Blood or breath. They're going to try and scare you. Be like, oh, if that's the way you want to go. They might then we might, they'll make it seem like what you're doing is really like, ooh, are you sure you want to go that way? You want to go that way. They're not going to make it easy on you, but just think about it. They've already pulled you over. This cop has it in his head that you are driving under the influence, especially if you know you're not inebriated. I mean, in any case, you shouldn't do the field sobriety, but especially if you know you're not inebriated, you should insist on a chemical test. Just because it's completely, again, there's no pass-fail to this thing, the field sobriety. And you're completely dependent on this guy fairly assessing how you're behaving. And then again, think about our buddy at Crimson Owl Comics. Think about Ronnie. He's got dystonia. He's got a movement disorder. What if you're shaky? What if you had too many cups of coffee? What if you're freaked out because you got pulled over? What if you're think of all the ways you could do this wrong. And this guy or gal, they just decide I just have a feeling. I could smell something in the car because you had one beer or something. You're a little shaky about it. Doesn't go great. You ask too many questions. You don't seem very confident. You seem nervous. Breath or blood? I'll wait. Yeah, I understand, officer. I'll wait. Not a lawyer. Here's what I would say. Check what I'm saying. Go do your own research. You'll see. That's the correct approach. Don't ever. I can't think of a reason to do a field sobriety test. Ever. It's bullshit. It's ridiculous. Okay. Anyway. See you next week, everybody. Have a safe weekend. Have a productive weekend. I'm going to have a productive weekend. Tune in to Top 5 Movie Villains next week, Wednesday or Thursday. Talk to you later.